Do you like what you see now?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Okay. Neil and I have been talking about the recording that I've just made, actually 10 days ago, and we feel that there ought to be a little explanation added to, as regards to, for instance, I want to tell you about my mum. Even though she's born in Latvia, her mum and dad, my grandparents on my mother's side, spoke Russian. And my mum had about 4 or 5 siblings. Everybody in the family spoke Russian, including us kids. And later on, of course, we moved to Germany, we also speak German. Okay, now with regards to my dad, he has a university education in history and languages. He spoke 6, and if you include Latin, he also spoke, you don't speak Latin, you're right, but anyway, he could do Latin as well as Latvian, German, Russian, French, Polish, English. How many is that?
I lost count. It's 6.
That's about
Anyway.
6. Okay, I wanted to let you know, and give me a hint, Neil. What do I want to say?
Well, we were talking about, Val Ava's role in this whole journey to basically freedom.
After we left the Ravensbrück concentration camp, we are heading west, sometimes a short stretch by train, because the railway lines and bridges and tunnels had not yet been repaired. So if you caught a train at all, it would not go for hundreds of miles. It would only go maybe 10 miles up the road, which is better than hoofing it. So, and we have a German guide with us. I think I mentioned that. He was one hell of a worker. A lot of times he carried Harold, who was only 2 years old at the time. And day after day we carry on westwards, and the conditions were deplorable. It's the middle of winter. It's wet, it's cold, we are hungry. We sleep in barns if we're lucky. Sometimes not even in a barn, sometimes outside, or bombed out railway station, whatever it might have been. And before I forget this, in case you think that we're the only ones who had it rough, everybody in war-torn Germany after the war had it rough, as bad as, or worse than what we had it. Our family members did not get killed, whereas I have known later on many people who suffered the same kind of hardship that we did at the time, was family members that had been killed or lost or maimed, that kind of thing. So in spite of everything, we were extremely fortunate that we stayed together. My old man, the last time we got a letter from him, I think it might have been early part of June, and he was a prisoner of war held in a camp outside of Flensburg. We eventually made our way up to there, as you know. So we got the letter. It's almost like a prisoner getting one last phone call, or the last meal. What else do I want? Okay, so we've got the German guide who was one hell of a worker. He said he had crossed the border many times into West Germany.
And the border at that time was just chain.
Yeah, the border in those days was not
barbed wire.
electrified. There wasn't a minefield in front of it. This was only 9 months after the end of the war. So comparatively easy to cross the border then, as what it was 10 years later, or 20 or 30.
But they probably had armed soldiers.
Yeah, they had armed guards, and we tried to cross a town called Helmstadt. If you look at Hanover and Berlin, there's the Autobahn that connects Hanover to Berlin. Helmstadt is a little bit east of Hanover. We tried to cross the border there, and groups in front of us were being shot at, and they're all fleeing backwards, retreating, and we did too. We were in a small group, I forget how many, but the groups tended to fluctuate. sometimes more, sometimes less. Slower ones drop back, faster ones go up ahead, and so on. And the German guide, after Helmstadt, after the groups in front were shot at, he said, he called us together, he said, "My nerve has failed me. I cannot go on." And Mum gave him the rest of her money. I don't know why he wanted money. Money didn't buy you anything at all. There was absolutely nothing that you could buy. So money is just useless. But anyway, he took it. And goodbye, gave Mum a kiss, gone. And then Mum said to us, "We have to go back. I can't go on. We have to go back." And Ava said, "We are not going back. We are going west. I'm going to lead you." And he's 12 years old at the time. 1946. Yeah, 12 years old at the bit. So he took over at the helm. He led us. And we got to a town called Salzwedel. That is on the border of what used to be West Germany and East Germany. East Germany being Russian occupied, West Germany being British and American occupied. So our last night, I think I've done this bit. I wanted to mention my mom to you. On January 6th, early in the morning, we slept the night in the barn, but now we are in the farmhouse kitchen. And my mum had to go to some kind of passport control thing. Passport as in, they give you temporary kind of little bitty of a paper saying Alexander and 4 children. And it's a temporary pass. And I was watching through a dirty window my mum walking towards the checkpoint that she had to go to get something stamped or some paper issued or whatever. And the windows were so dirty and filthy, I had to spit on my hand and wipe a little bit of clear the window so that I could see my mom going past. And Neil and I have talked about this, and I would like to describe the body language of my mum. Shoulders defeated, head hanging low, in total hopelessness.
Mm-hmm.
There is no hope. And that's the feeling that I got from watching my little mum walking past the window. And then I thought, after she'd gone, I thought, what if I never saw my mum again? And it was the strongest feeling that at the time I thought, I'm not going to see her again. But of course we did. What else now?
Yeah, so, well, why don't you carry on from Ravensbrück?
Yeah.
So you've met your dad.
We're almost at the border now.
Okay, well, I mean, you I thought that you should mention your, was it sheep's head soup that the,
okay, let's
just
go
as a
back.
side, yeah?
Yeah, let's go back to the Ravensbrück concentration camp. And it was occupied by Russians as well as people like us who are non-Germans who are going to be deported, not deported, but transported to Siberia. Where any non-German, and I mentioned this, like Ukrainians, Bulgarians, Romanians, Latvians, Poles, and many, many Russians who were fleeing from communism to war-torn Germany. They preferred that to communism. And if a Russian was caught in Eastern Germany, off to Siberia, same as everybody in the camp, destined for Siberia, except eventually, we did not go to Siberia, obviously, because I'm talking to you now. Mm. And yeah, so one particular time, we were in the kitchen or in a room that had a pot-bellied stove with a great big cooking pot on top of it. And I remember Val being lifted up by a Russian soldier to look inside the pot, and there was a sheep's head in it. Then they lifted me up. I'm 9 years old. They lifted me up and I could see a sheep's head in the pot that the Russians were going to eat.
So they were starving too, in
Yes.
a large part.
The Russians didn't eat much better than what we did.
Yeah.
Well, there's got to be more. Neil, give me a hint.
Well, it's a great point that Ava was sort of leading the charge. He was
Yeah.
certainly had that in him, and that much older that he could possibly do that at the time.
Getting back to Ava, who said, "I'm going to lead you now. We're going west." He had a natural knack for being able to lead us. Nothing seemed to faze like he could do everything, which he did. And he's only a year and a bit older than what I am. He's my hero now, and he was then.
Yeah. And
And Harold being carried
Yeah.
and sometimes walking and whatever. It took us days to get to the water. Not once did he ever, as a 2-year-old, did he whimper or complain or cry. Not ever. And that was a real blessing to us, because a lot of times there were Russians ahead of us and we had to crawl and on our hands and knees and that kind of thing. If he had cried out, the Russians would have heard us. And, yes, well, what else can I
Well, do you want to, is it jumping ahead to discuss, okay, when you're finally reunited with your dad, so now you're a family unit again, obviously, and still in a lot of
yeah.
danger.
I was going to stop recording when my mom said it would be better if your dad didn't know everything that happened to us.
Yeah.
And of course, he never did know. He knew a lot, but not everything.
So what was the...
We lived together in a camp, in an army camp. And the camp was for Latvians only. And every camp similar to this one, that used to be German army camps when the war was on. Estonians had their camps, Ukrainians had their camps. And we are all non-Germans, except that we are now in West Germany. And we were not being deported to Australia or South Africa.
Yeah.
A little bit of a joke there. Okay. And we lived in that particular camp for 2 years. And after we'd been there a year, the government, I'm giving you too much, I don't want.
Well, I mean, did you, resume schooling and all that
Yes,
shortly after?
We went to school
Yeah.
in the camp,
Yeah.
in Latvian.
Yeah.
And I have a friend whose name is John Clemens. He is coming here on next Tuesday. We get together every so often. I have known him from that particular camp. The name of the camp was Antwerp, as in Belgium.
Mm-hmm.
The city of Antwerp. Well, that was the name of the camp. And I have known him from then. He was 10 years old. He's 8 months older than I am. June the 21st, he's going to be 90 years old.
Was this a communal sort of situation where you're eating breakfast, lunch, dinner with everybody in a big hall kind of thing, or a room, or
Yeah, no.
or you had your own kind of private?
We had to go to the kitchen with some kind of utensil, cooking pot or whatever, and pick up, most of the time it was soup that we ate. And you had to go to the kitchen and bring the soup home to the barrack that we lived in. Everybody had to do that, and there were 1,500 of us in that particular camp.
Mm-hmm.
And we all went to school, like I said, and then after about a year living in the camp, my dad had the option of applying what country do you want to be sent to? And the countries that most people wanted to go to: United States, Britain, Canada, South Africa, Australia, New Zealand, Argentina.
Yeah.
So nobody wanted to go to Argentina, for instance, but Britain was a popular choice, as was Canada. Like I said, most went to the States.
But top of the list for your dad was Britain?
Yeah.
Yeah.
My dad wanted to go to Britain, which he did. And he worked as a farm labourer, in spite of the fact he has a university education. So he had to work there about a year before we, the rest of his family, could be sent over to England.
And we're talking what year specifically? 47?
1947.
Yeah.
About December the 18th. Harold has a birthday, December the 20th. We landed in England, on the east coast of England, at a town called, in Canadian you would say Harwich, we say Harwich. And that was a town that they had the docks there, and we landed in Harwich. London was about maybe 80 miles away, so by train we made our way to London. Everybody that was, we used to call it a transport. A lot of people from these camps went on a train to different camps, and eventually from Amsterdam or Rotterdam, I forget which one, we left, hundreds of us, on a train.
Were anybody in the family could speak English at all, even a bit?
No, we did not speak English at all.
And when you arrive in England, was it a system where somebody was there to guide you further along?
There were people there to receive us. They knew that we were on the particular boat that we were on, and as soon as we got on dock, they gave us a cup of tea. In Latvia and in Europe in general, if you drank tea at all, it did not have milk in it. So they gave us a cup of tea, and we didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
We didn't think it was tea, but anyway, apparently it was tea with milk in it. And I'm sure they gave us something to eat as well, like bun or whatever.
It's a pretty symbolic first taste of England, you know.
Yes. And then by train, they took us down to London, and we stayed. It wasn't a hotel, it was like a mansion house, upstairs, downstairs type of house, like 5 or 6 floors up, and we all stayed in there and misbehaved in general. And then by train, they sent us down to a town called Corsham, another army camp. So the army camp, once again, about 1,200, 1,300 people, and we had 4 nationalities that lived in that camp. Estonians, Latvians, Lithuanians, and Ukrainians. Ukrainians and Latvians were the most population-wise, but the camp was full up. And we lived in that camp for about 5 years, till we bought our first house in 1953 in Swindon.
Okay, so, sorry, Corsham is how far from Swindon? What direction?
About 25 miles.
Okay. And, but Granddad, or your dad was with you?
Yeah, my dad was with us.
Yeah, in Corsham and so on?
Yes, but not at first. He worked on the farm.
Yeah. And what would he be doing once he was back in Corsham with you?
He was farm labourer.
Yeah.
Until about 1951, when there was an ad in the paper. They were looking for Russian-speaking teachers. So my dad applied for that particular job, and it paid £450 a year, which is £9 a week. In those days, if you made £3 a week, you were making good money. So my dad made £9 a week from 1951 onwards. And his status, he worked in an army camp as a Russian teacher, and so did 50 teachers. They all taught Russian to the British troops. It was called JSSL. That means Joint Services School for Linguists. Joint service means you had Army, Navy, and Air Force personnel who were being taught Russian by people like my dad. So at first, the first camp that he taught us was down in Bodmin, Cornwall. And he was there for about 2 years. And then the camp was relocated too, or the people in the camp, the soldiers and the teachers, they were relocated to a town called Crail, which is, if you look at St. Andrews on the map in Scotland, St. Andrews on the east coast, just below Dundee. Crail is near St. Andrews, about 11 miles away. So he taught there for about maybe 4 or 5, no, longer than that. I forget. I got to think about it, which I don't want to do.
So he would be away for long stretches of time?
My dad we hardly ever saw him, maybe 3 times a year. he used to come home and leave.
Yeah.
A week or two at a time, then go back to Scotland.
So
And after that, he was relocated to a town called High Wycombe. If you look at London, go a little bit west, maybe 40 miles. High Wycombe is near there. And same thing, he taught Russian to the British troops. You know?
talk about, you know, what were you, 11 years old when you're in England, but, you know, when you're in Swindon. But anyway, fill out the picture of, like, adapting. You had to learn the language quick, obviously.
Yes.
You were in the school system, I suppose, all
Yes.
English speaking, right, by this point?
Well, Neil's saying it for me. We went to an English school from 1948, January 1948. Because we landed in 1947, December the 20th. We stayed in London for about 3 or 4 days. And then we moved to this camp outside of Corsham. And we went to school in a village called Neston, which is outside of Corsham, about 3 or 4 miles away. And we couldn't speak English, any of us. None of us spoke English. So they put us in school there. And it was tough going at first. And this is from January till June. We went to school there. And then just up the road from our camp, there were a lot of military camps in England, Germany, all over the place. Except the soldiers have now gone home and the camps are empty. So one of these particular camps, about 3 or 4 barracks, were turned into a schoolhouse. And every teacher that we had, they spoke German. So that was our Ukrainians, Lithuanians, Estonians and Latvians. We all spoke German before we spoke English. And the teachers that were hired for the purpose of teaching us foreigners English, they all spoke German.
And did you, you know, receive any sort of rough going being immigrants and a bit of bias perhaps, you know?
Yeah, we had, yes.
Yeah. Just interested to know, like, how smooth or not it was.
We were not picked upon.
No.
Not that way, but Neil wanted me to tell you about a mishap that I had on June the 28th. I'm 12 years old now. And what we had during weekends, we used to have skirmishes with the English kids from the immediate vicinity. It wasn't we didn't fight as such. We argued and probably yelled and cursed each other, you know, that kind of thing. But we had a quarry. A quarry is a mine. A quarry is where you cut stone, limestone in our particular case. And the quarry was right across the road from the camp. And we used to go down this quarry on weekends. And we used to explore what goes on down there. It had a very steep gradient going down. It had steps on one side. You could walk down the steps. And in the middle of the tunnel going downwards, you had a railway track. It was only about 3 feet wide. Little wagons would be winched up with great big slabs of stone that were put on these little wagons and then winched up by a motor winching came up on top. So we Latvian kids, we are down the quarry one particular time, and we could hear some English. We were just about ready to start coming up, and we could hear some English kids yelling and screaming up on top. And one of them picked up the rock and he kind of threw it down the mine shaft, and it made a hell of a noise as it came bounding down. And we thought it was management, maybe. The people that own the quarry, we thought it was them chasing us. We didn't know it was just a rock coming down, till eventually it landed at the bottom on the flat part of the quarry. So that scared the shit out of us. Anyway, the week after, June the 28th, we are on top. We, Latvians, are up on top, and the English kids are down the bottom. And we are going to do what they did to us the week before. Throw a rock down a shaft, which is what I did. I picked up the rock about the size of a brick, maybe a little bigger, and threw it down. And then I heard yelling and screaming, and the English kids coming up steps. and my rock had hit an English kid in the head. It was a glancing blow, but he was unconscious, bleeding from the left side of his head, and he was being brought up by two kids. And at that time, right then, the guy that owned or managed the quarry, he was up on top with us. He had pulled up in the car, and the English kids were bringing up, his name's Ted. I got to know him later. Yeah. So Ted was brought up unconscious. They put him on the back seat of the Plymouth Riley car. It was a beautiful car. He put him on the back seat, and the manager or the owner of the quarry, off he went to the hospital, which was about 11 miles away. And there were all kinds of stories about that Ted had died. That I am ready to commit suicide. But the gossip, it made such an impression on me that now that I look back on it, but let me tell you what happened one time. The year is 1969. I had just been over here to Canada. I worked for about 7 months and went home to sell the house. And John Clements, I mentioned him just now, he lived in a town called Melksham, which is about 20 miles from Swindon. And he used to drop in as we did on him. But this particular time he came over. In those days in England, we didn't keep any beer in the house. There's a pub on every corner. So John and I go across to the pub, as we always did. And I had about 2 or 3 beers in me. And John said to me, I bumped into Ted last week. Just 20 years after the fact, when I dropped the rock on Ted's head, and the tears started running down my face. I just streaming there. 20 years later, I'm in a pub with a couple of beers in me, and I can't see Dick all. I'm making, blindfolded almost, I'm making my way to the washroom to compose myself. Which I did.
Are you saying that you thought all those years he had died?
No.
Oh, okay. Wow, just to clarify that, yeah.
No.
But yeah,
I knew
that's a
when
profound.
Ted came out of hospital, he came to see us.
Yeah.
I remember Mum giving him some money.
So, how long did it take? I mean, was there a point when the household was speaking English, like amongst the siblings?
Well, it doesn't take long for kids to pick up.
No, exactly. But and I mean, your dad's away a lot of times. Obviously, he's a master of languages, so he's speaking English. How about your mum? Did she give it a go and do well?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like the stories that you've told before about, you know, the famous or infamous British, cooking. Not much to be desired at that point,
Did
maybe.
I say that?
Well, I mean, that's the sort of stereotype, I suppose. But you told me these stories about how the kids just loved coming over because the food was so good.
After we bought our first house in Swindon, we made friends at work, or Ava and Val. Even though I was older than I am, he delayed his college education. I graduated from college before he did. And so when we moved to Swindon, I started work, and he and Val went to college. And they finished that, and so they met some friends that he used to bring home, Mike and Spud, Brian Davis. His nickname was Spud. And when they used to come and sit down with us for our meal, and Mom used to cook, you can't imagine how they ate. They had never eaten food like ours.
Yeah.
English food being fairly bland, or in their particular case it must have been bland, and whereas ours is a little different.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, because your mum, I think you've told me before, had a nice garden in the backyard, so a lot of fresh...
We had a garden, we had chickens in the back.
Okay.
You know.
So you were butchering chickens at a certain point?
Ava used to kill the chickens.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So he was, I guess, the surrogate father when
Yes.
your dad's away, right?
We had a block toilet one time. We had an outside toilet and no bathroom and no hot water, just cold water. But it was a flush toilet outside. And our toilet backed onto our next door neighbour's toilet. And he was an old man, and when he used to go in the toilet, he used to smoke his pipe or whatever. And we could smell not only what he did on the toilet, but also the pipe tobacco.
Yeah.
And one particular time, the toilet got bogged down. And of it by hand. And once again, he said, I'm the man of the house. He stuck his hand in there and pulled out whatever the obstruction was and flushed the toilet, and there, it was gone. Yeah.
And, okay. So, I just wanted to get it, you know, the Vespa thing, that's part of your youth.
Yeah.
When did you get your first, or when was your license? When did you first get
I bought
that?
a scooter.
Yeah.
My first one was a Lambretta 150cc Italian bike scooter.
Mm-hmm.
And I bought that in 58. And then in 59 I traded that in and bought a Vespa, it was a 150 GS. And Harold and I actually went to Europe on that
Right.
as a holiday when I was 25 years old. Harold was 18.
Mm-hmm. So how did you, you know, were you pleased to be in England as a young guy? And
Absolutely.
yeah, yeah,
I loved the English way of life.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And what specifically? Just pub life and all? Because you didn't even really
I
drink.
did a lot of cycling. We explored an awful lot.
Yeah.
I was 16 years old. We rode 90 miles to Stonehenge, 45 miles one way, 45 back. So that's 90 miles on a beat up old bicycle, heavy grown up man's bike. And I was 16 years old, small and tiny, extremely tough.
That's right.
But anyway, we cycled 90 miles to get to Stonehenge. Maybe you've seen some photographs of me lying on one of the big stones.
I don't think I ever have.
But maybe I should tell you a little bit more. I've been thinking about this. Should I tell you or should I not? Anyway, as you all know, I went to see Mom. Mom, I want to get married. Oh, would you? When do you want to get married? Soon. Okay. And at that particular time, I had a letter from my cousin in Germany. Her name's Inge. And you've all met Renate. Inge is the oldest sister of Renate. Renate and Hubert came to see us here in Port Sydney. And Renate writes me a letter proposing marriage to me. In East Germany, apparently, you could marry your cousin. And then I had to write back to her and explain, hey guys, I'm in trouble. I have to get married, which is what we did in those days. Apart from the fact you left your girlfriend and so on. And then, more or less at the same time, day or two, a week or whatever, I get a letter from a 14-year-old girl who is writing on behalf of her 14-year-old friend who belonged to the Swindon Dolphin Swimming Club, as I did. And I was the coach. I'm 9 years older than what she is, but I started coaching her in diving when she was about 7 or 8 years old. And of course I was much younger than that, but meanwhile I'd been in the Air Force and so on. And this girl, writing on behalf of her friend's name is Katie Fisher, and she said that 9 years, like Katie's 14, she said if only you could wait a year and a bit, she'll be 16 years old, that we can get married. Well there.
Yeah. And how old were you when, was it both you and Ava signed up for the Air Force?
What happened, my dad is working as a Russian language teacher, instructor. And every teacher in that army school, they all had officer status, or status if you like. And that means you could go in the officer's mess. I went to see my dad a few times, and even though I was in the Air Force at the time, I was not an officer, and I was not in uniform when I went to see him. So my dad took me to the officer's, my goodness, my lips is sore, officer's mess. And my dad knew I was a good pool shooter, so he wanted me to beat the officers that I played against, which I did. I was much better than what they could.
Wow.
And my dad liked that. But there was something else I was going to say about it. I've forgotten now.
Well, signing up, or?
Oh, yeah. So, around about 1954, my dad had been a teacher for about 3 years, and he felt that if he was to become a British citizen, that his chances for promotion would be better. He's career oriented. And he said he could apply to become a British citizen. So you fill in a form, it says, how many kids have you got and so on. And if you're under 21 years old, Ava and I would have to go in the military, which suited us fine. So in other words, he could have kept us off the application form if we did not want to go in the military, which we did.
Mm-hmm.
So in 1955, Ava and I joined the Air Force for 2 years.
And so you were stationed somewhere for that time?
Yeah.
Close to Swindon?
No. Well, the distances in Britain are not very great. From end to end, it's about 890 miles. From southern tip of Cornwall to northern tip of Scotland, it's about 890 miles. So I was stationed in a town called Warrington. I was doing my boot camp there. So about 2.5 months later, I've done my boot camp. I'm being posted to a permanent camp that I'm going to spend the rest of my time, the rest of the 2 years that I'm in for. If you look at a town called Maidstone, south east of London, in the county of Kent, that's where I spent the rest of my time. And a lot of times we used to hitch a ride into London, which was only about 40 miles away. What else?
Well, can I just jump ahead
Sure.
here? I remember you telling me about, after your dad had died, some of the incredible testimonials from students, using the term genius. And as we're all listening here or related to him, maybe some of us have gotten some of that. Who knows?
Well, all right. Like you could hear Neil. When my dad died on May the 17th, 1973, we were living in Bradford, just down the road from here, well, 100 miles. And I went across for the funeral, as did Val and Eberhard, who lived in Germany, and Ava, who lived in, at that time, I think it might have been Zambia in Africa.
Mm.
Yeah, I think I've got that right, yeah. So we all went home, me from here, Ava, Zambia, and Val and Eberhard from Ludwigsburg, Germany. Eberhard and Val are gone now. So it's only Ava and me. And Ava is not in good shape. His wife is not in good shape. So it's not likely that we're ever likely to meet again. Yes.
Well,
sorry. Yeah,
No, just some of the letters that
Neil was saying
former
that
students, I guess, from Scotland.
my dad had many students of influential background. One of them was, you've all heard of the Duke of Kent, who's related to the Queen. The Queen's gone now. One of her sons, the Duke of Kent, if you turn the clock, he would have been about my age then. When I'm about 21, 22, this young, the Duke of Kent, maybe that's not his official title, maybe that was his brother, who was the Duke of Kent. But anyway,
Mm-hmm.
royalty. He was my dad's student, amongst many people. My dad had students from Japan, who later became, one of the students from Japan, he became the first secretary of the Japanese embassy in London. And I remember reading the letter that he wrote because he couldn't attend because official engagements that he had. And he described what my dad meant to him. And apparently he meant a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And there were other letters like it, most impressive. In case you were wondering, I've got the letters, or did have. Adelaide's got them now.
Yeah. And, okay, well, just what time did you meet Mum?
Mom and I met at work.
Mm-hmm.
We worked for the same company, or in the same building but different companies. It was, we imported lambs and beef. Lambs from Australia and Argentina and New Zealand. And beef from South Africa. The name of the company was Borswick. And Mum worked for a company called Fat Stock, also selling English killed, English reared and slaughtered cows and pigs and so on. And this is where we met. And, you know,
Well, I'm steering this now to, you know, when you were pub owners or pub managers,
Okay.
not owners, but
yeah.
landlords, and then the, what, Working Man's Club?
When I
Well,
got
that's
Mom
interesting.
into trouble, I decided to take a part. I'm working as an accountant in a company called Garrard. We used to say Garrards. Garrard. They used to make record changers,
Turntables.
turntables,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah. And we had about 4,000 employees, and I was one of 6 accountants working there. Not a qualified accountant, but studying to be qualified, which I never did make. But my job was as an accountant, one of 6. And I decided to take a job as a part-time bartender. And I worked in a pub called the Sun Inn, just outside of Swindon, Coat Water.
Mm-hmm.
That is the lake that we had there, Coat Water. And I worked there for maybe 6 months or so, and then a position came up where they were looking for a steward and stewardess. That means somebody to run a drinking men's club. It was a working men's club, that's what it was called, working men's club. But they served drinks, and they are looking for somebody to take over the position that is being empty, vacated. And I am 24 years old, and Mum is just 18, and Jimmy is about 6 weeks old. When we applied for the job and we got it,
Yeah.
we were by far the youngest in the whole of the British Isles. There was a magazine, I've forgotten the name of the magazine, but they sent a reporter around to interview us because we were so young, 24 and 18.
I'd love to have a copy of that.
Yeah,
So it was publicized or
yes,
in publication,
it was a write-up about us.
yeah, fantastic.
Yeah.
And then also there was a pub that you're looking after as well, not simultaneously, but afterwards?
Yeah,
Okay.
and we were there for about 2 years. And I'd had enough of that because my friends used to come in for a drink and they used to say, Jim, you're on the wrong side of the bar. I'm 24 and 25 years old, 26. And so eventually it got to me, yeah, we're too young to be doing this. It is not a job for a young man like me.
What do you mean? Because they're having a great time and
Yes.
you're slaving away on a Saturday
I'm
night?
pulling the pint, they're
Yeah.
drinking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so, you know, Ava being older and, you know, he meets Pearl and all that, so family's starting to disperse, I guess,
Yeah.
somewhat.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And, okay, to jump forward, I don't know what's going on in those those sort of intervening years. But
Yeah.
you know, when your mom passed on, and
Let's go back to I'm 25, 1961. Harold was 18. We decided to go on a European holiday. My granny was still alive in those days. She lived up in Oldenburg, which is northwestern Germany, not too far from northern Holland, up the top end there anyway. And she lives in an old people's home. So Harold and I decided to go and visit our old granny, who's about, maybe 77, round about that age. And we ride our scooter. And our scooter is a 150, like I mentioned, and we're sleeping rough wherever. We're young, we don't care, we can do anything. But we did have a tent. Occasionally we'd put up a tent, other times we'd go to the building site, go into a partially built house that had a roof on it, and we sleep on the bare floor, whatever. We get up to Oldenburg, we meet my granny. I had met her before when I came out of the Air Force in 1957. I'm 21 years old. By myself, I go up to Northern Germany to see my granny.
now had she been there that whole time, living?
No, she lived
she
in
had
many places.
But did she have to work her way over to West Germany as well, like migrate over
No,
during the?
She left before that.
Okay, there we go.
And at one time she lived on an island called Rügen. Rügen. R-U, 2 dots on the U, G Bergen, on the island. It's in the Baltic Sea. It's a fairly big island. And she lived there. And then she moved over, like I said, to Oldenburg.
Yeah.
And Harold and I went to see her. We actually had her sitting on my scooter. She was so proud to sit on this. She's an old woman, about 80 years old or close to. And she's so happy to be sitting on a scooter. Got a photograph of her somewhere.
Yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
And then Harold and I, something that I wanted to say. We, yes, okay. I think I mentioned that. We lived in Paris, in a village called Vernac. I think I mentioned that. And we watched the bells being lowered. Did I?
Yeah, we
Okay,
went over
the
there.
bells were being lowered by rope. Propaganda music was blaring, and the German army was truck after truck after truck, hundreds of it, or so it seemed. Every truck was full of soldiers in the back, and every truck had a cannon behind it. And they were, I assume they were on the way to the Russian front, because Hitler had just declared war on Russia. And so we were sitting on the palace wall. It's a palace as opposed to a castle. Castle is fortified, a palace is not. But it had a bit of a wall around it, and we sat on it. And I'm explaining to Harold, this is what happened 20 years ago. When I was 5 years old, now I'm 25. The bells came down, army, propaganda music. Go forward now to 1986. I'm 50 years old. Jean and I decide I should have a European birthday present, 50 years old. So we go over to Europe again. I am driving my sister's car, and we go to Vernac again, second time, or if you like, third time now. 41, 61, 86. And what used to be a beautiful church that had these bells on it, that church is gone, replaced by the ugliest apartment building you've ever seen in your life. Garish, hideous colours painted. It was just absolutely an eyesore. You knocked down a beautiful church in a Catholic part of Germany. Why the Catholic Church decided that they want to sell off a church, and then somebody bought it to be knocked down. That means you've got to have building some kind of permission to demolish it and to put up something else. So somebody has to approve demolition as well as putting something in its place, and that something is that ugly apartment building that I mentioned.
It's a shame.